In this episode of Detroit Performs, a theater company brings thought-provoking and entertaining plays to Midtown Detroit. A painter restores Detroit's landmarks. And recreating one of Las Vegas' gems. It's all ahead on this edition of Detroit Performs.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to Detroit Performs. I'm your host, DJ Oliver, and today I'm at Trinity House Theatre in Livonia. Trinity House Theatre exists to enrich and enliven Metro Detroit communities through works of art. I'll be taking you on a tour of this place throughout the show. Our first segment features Detroit Public Theater, which brings world-class, mind-stimulating, and joyful plays to Detroit audiences. We caught up with Detroit Public Theater during their production of Dot.
Looking through this old trunk of family albums, report cards, newspaper clippings from when Clinton won,
Obama won,
family reunion t-shirts, cassette tape.
I think anything in this moment in time that reminds us how much we have in common as opposed to what we don't have in common is really, really important. The thing that I heard about Detroit Public Theater, even being out in New York, was just the caliber of the productions that they were putting up, but also the kinds of stories that they were telling. Like Detroit 67, which is about the city, obviously, and Dot and Murder Ballad. I mean, these are all plays that have been written very recently that are tackling interesting subjects about sexuality, about family, about race, about the resurgence of cities. The Detroit Public Theater is led by 3 women. I wish that I could tell a different story today about the rise of women in power and the rise of women in positions of authority, creative, political, whatever it is. And so the fact that it's happening with this theater, our set designer is female as well. And there are incredible women who should be at the table, who should be creative, who should be leaders. And so for a theater to be run by not 1, not 2, but 3 women, and to be invited into the fold there, and for them to be telling these tough, challenging artistic stories, I think it's a fantastic thing for the city and for the American theater as a whole. Once you start moving, come to the table, come all the way up, you can sit, you can start getting things ready. The play that I'm directing is the second production of the Detroit Public Theater season. It's called Dot by Coleman Domingo.
Dot. She is a woman who is dealing with Alzheimer's, and her 3 awesome but difficult children are coming over for the holidays. It's near Christmas, and they are figuring out a way individually and collectively on how to deal with their new reality of the sickness that their mother has.
If you really want a family decision, then you really have to involve the family, not dictate everything and then get mad because you feel so put upon.
Avery's right.
They're at different levels of acceptance about the extent of her disease, and so we get to see them deal with it. And it represents a family that's very much a modern American family. There's a gay son who has an interracial relationship, and 2 fierce, incredible black women as well, and a neighbor who's Caucasian, and a health worker who's from Kazakhstan. So it's this beautiful depiction of what it means to be an American in this moment, I think. What family means, what coming together means, what rallying means as a community and as a family.
And I can make the giblet stuffing from the drippings of your fancy turkey too. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Avery, we are not having carbs.
What?
Or gluten.
Say what now?
Or dairy.
Or anything that brings joy. Pure unadulterated joy.
You know, modern agrarian practices.
Y'all about to get on my nerves.
I play the youngest, Avery. She is loud. She is a bowl of different flavors. She is very outspoken, and she tells it like it is, even if the moment is not the right moment. And that's when I was like, she's fun. I like her. When some people are being so serious and it's a very serious moment, she's like, what do we have to do?
Latex gloves, tape pebbles. Mama, what kind of freaky dicky stuff you doing?
Shut up, Avery. Fidel, explain.
Shelly is my overbearing older sister, and Donnie is my older brother. Shelly, she is more of the caregiver at this moment to our mother, and she has all of the responsibility. So you can imagine like, you know what, I need help and I'm irritated and I need y'all to step up and to help. Donnie, he's dealing with stuff within his marriage, but he's like, you know what, I have a life as well. But Shelly is really the one who let us know as the younger siblings, like, this is serious and we all need to sit down and talk about it. And we deal with that in a more interesting way as well.
Family meeting, now.
Now?
You know a better time?
You are locking a woman with Alzheimer's and her illegal caregiver in the basement for
A few minutes, we all need to talk.
Okay, well, I'll just go upstairs, check some emails.
Nope, you too, Adam, you're a part of this family too, and since I can't reach you both in a timely manner, I have to lock a woman with Alzheimer's and her illegal caregiver in the basement. I made a list.
It's this real diverse representation of a family at Christmas time, coming together, but also dealing with a family member who's on the brink of illness, about a mother who's also an elder, and what it means to take care of our elders in this community. So it does all this, asks these very tough questions, and it's wrapped up in this beautiful dark comedy. So there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of life, as happens, you know, when families come together during the holidays. There's a lot of laughter, but there are tears too.
Most times you have to laugh to keep from crying, you know, and when I first read the script, I was like, how could you make a joke at that time, like at this moment? But it's hilarious, it really is. Every last person within this, even Dot, the one who is dealing with the sickness, she will have you cracking up.
Who is that cleaning lady? I don't know her.
Mom, that's Shelly.
Shelly?
Yes, and that's Donnie.
Looking just like your father.
So at a moment, you probably feel like, oh my goodness, I want to cry, but right there, we snatch you and make you just want to cry laughing. The meaning of the story is very therapeutic because my mom, she had an early stage form of dementia. She passed in July. So getting into this, it was like, oh my goodness, how am I gonna feel about doing this? But it's very therapeutic because it's some things that goes on within the play that I myself really did experience. Madeline, the awesome actress who plays Dot, I would whisper to her at times like, oh my goodness, you sound just like my mother. Or things that's within the script that I'm like, oh, I remember when I had to go through that, of having to repeat something back to back and not getting frustrated. And then when the person realized that they are repeating it, how angry and frustrated they get from it. And she is delivering that role to me in such a real way.
Mom,
Yes?
do you know who I am?
Why are you asking me that? Of course I know you. Yes, you my baby.
Yes. I'm your baby, Mom.
I wasn't an Avery in the situation, but it made me realize like love is the most powerful thing on this planet, because no matter what you go through, no matter what your family is going through, one of the toughest things that you're going through, love will push you through, and family is everything. So I'm honored. I really am honored to have been chosen to play this role because it's important to the story. So I'm just thankful.
I think it's important to have plays like Dot because they remind us how universal what we're dealing with is. This is an African-American family in West Philly, but there are white families and Latino families and Hispanic families that are dealing with similar things. Something like Alzheimer's afflicts us no matter who we are or what we're from or what the color of our skin is. This play is able to break down walls in our society by just reminding us about the things that we have in common rather than the things that we don't have in common. And I think, you know, we just need to be reminded that there are people among us who can bring so much, can make our country so much richer just by virtue of like their humanity. When the audience leaves the play, I want them to laugh. I want them to feel buoyant. I want them to celebrate the fact that they're alive and to look at their family members. And if there is something going on in their family, to deal with it, to say like, I think I saw a family move through something that was difficult, I can do the same with mine. And do it with joy, do it with celebration, do it with positivity and optimism.
You can learn more about Detroit Public Theater as well as all the artists we feature on DetroitPerforms.org. Painter Theresa DeRoo has created hundreds of exhibitions and restorations for some of Detroit's most iconic landmarks, including some historic theaters. Take a look.
I'm really happy we're shooting from Orchestra Hall today. The work we're doing here is still on a smaller scale, but we've still been able to do some work on the ceiling, do some work on some tricky areas with their gold work and some of their faux finish work. Actually, essentially, one whole side of the building was suffering from water damage in the interior. And they gave us a job on the ceiling recently, and we built a 30-foot scaffold and got up there, and it looks beautiful. So first it's figuring out the logistics of scaffolding and lighting. One of the things I found out is that there was horsehair in the plaster, which contributes to how wonderful the acoustics are here at Orchestra Hall. So we started with that. We started with the repairs, we brought down all the chips, did some color matching work, created stencils, and put it back together, and now you can't even tell, which means we did a good job. So we're really happy about that. The most unusual job I ever faced has to be the accidental mummies of Guanajuato. I worked on that at the Detroit Science Center exhibit shop. They brought 35 actual mummies from Guanajuato, Mexico. My biggest challenge was to create a Mexican cemetery. In a Mexican cemetery, they have blocks or cubes, and they're all stacked up in long rows. So you might see a wall with 200 cubes, and they're all different. They're all decorated by their families. And the only way to really accomplish that job and make it believable was to somehow connect with the people's names that I was painting or looking at. And one girl that was working with me couldn't do it, and I really needed her help, and I had to put her in front of one of them and say, "This was your grandma. She used to take care of you every weekend. She had roses in her garden. Now decorate it." She still couldn't do it, but that was an incredible, incredible exhibit. And I got to travel around the country installing that exhibit in a few different states. The most challenging job I was faced with has to be, hands down, the Fox elevators. That's in their main lobby. Highly decorative elevators on metal, made in the 1920s. They were thrashed. They'd been smashed into by everything, holes drilled into them, names carved into them. So there was pop, syrup, and all manner of things all glommed onto them. And the first time I saw those elevators, I remember thinking, I hope I don't have to paint those, because they looked so tough. And when he asked me if I could do it, I said what I always say, yes. Then I started figuring it out, and it took me about 6 months of research. And we still weren't ready for the challenges, because no one expected for the failure of adhesion for today's automotive paints to the metals of the 1920s, which was before they had all the different alloys that they have now. And we had to start over 3 times. But in the end, I just kept pushing and challenging and asking questions until we finally found a solution, and it really paid off. They look great. I love those. Love them. I have an all-female crew, and I find that they're highly organized, very efficient, very timely, very polite with clients, and we have a lot of fun. It is so exciting for me to be involved in the restoration projects at these beautiful historic Detroit landmarks and returning them to their original glory. I love this work.
All right, guys, so I'm here with the president of the board of Trinity House Theatre, Bill Keith. How you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
All right, so when I drove in here today, you cannot help but realize this place is surrounded by a cemetery. So you can tell our viewers out there a little bit of the history of this place.
Well, this was a church going back into the 1800s, and actually the auditorium portion of the theater, the lobby and the backstage areas were all added on at a later point. And Trinity House Theatre started using the space in 1981.
And what kind of productions do you guys have here?
Right now we do mostly live music, singer-songwriters of a lot of different genres, rock, blues, jazz, folk music.
Okay, and what about the atmosphere of this place? What kind of crowds come in here?
It's a great place for seeing live music.
Okay.
The crowds are really tuned into seeing the performers and really listening to the music. I think it's one of the great things about Trinity House is that people really care about hearing the music and being really attentive to the live performance.
Yeah, so this place has been around for a long time. So what impact has this had on the patrons of the city?
I think it's a great venue for not only just the local fans of live music, but also for performers. We've always heard from performers that it's just a real unreal experience to have an audience that really truly cares about what you're doing as a performer. And that definitely happens here at Trinity House. It's really magical.
Glad to hear that. So what do you want the impact to be for this legacy of the Trinity House Theatre?
Well, we've always said that we use the theater to provide Southeast Michigan with brave, truthful, and necessary works of art. And that's really been our mission for the past 35 years. And we continue to really provide a venue that really supports the arts and especially live music.
Well, I'm a big fan. I like this intimate space too. Thank you, Bill. We appreciate you talking to us.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. So let's check out some upcoming events happening in and around the D. To discover more events in Greater Detroit, visit ixity.com. In the 1950s and 60s, Louis Prima and Keely Smith were the swingingest musical powerhouse on the Las Vegas Strip. Best known for his high musical energy and her deadpan responses, the group became an act that would later influence Sonny and Cher. Louis and Keely, Live at the Sahara, is a production about their lives. Take a look.
My mama taught me, never stop smiling. Never do a bad show. And rule number one, always listen to your mama. Oh, midnight. Showtime.
When the music hits you, you can't help but start tapping your toe because these musicians and Louis Prima and Keely Smith were great.
Angelina, I adore you.
Louis and Keely Live at the Sahara is really a musical play. It's very much a Star is Born story because Louis Prima was a huge a music force in America. In the early 50s, rock and roll came in, and all those big bands died. But Louis Prima's motto was, "This cat's got 9 lives," and he kept reinventing himself.
Now piano, what's in that cat played with Chuck Berry? With Johnny Johnson, go out there. Now bring the plumber like a dee-ba-dee-ba-doom-pop.
He met this young 17-year-old girl in Norfolk, Virginia. Her name is Keely Smith.
She is a big fan of his. She saw him when he was at the height of his career at the Steel Pier in Atlantic City, and couldn't wait to meet him and wanted to sing for him.
I'm Dorothy Keely. My uncle said you were looking for me.
And what are you wearing?
I was at the beach. I got here as fast as I could.
You can't come on stage like that. Yes, she can.
I've got a prom dress in the trunk of the car.
Go get it. That's more like it.
I own every album you ever made.
Great.
You and you alone bring out the gypsy in me.
You'll catch her now. Whoa, 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 whoa.
He heard her voice and thought maybe he could, put something together and have her as a backup singer.
And they invented this act called The Wildest. Got a break to play 2 weeks in Vegas, but to do a series of sets that would start at 11:30 midnight and go until 5, 6 o'clock in the morning.
I look in your eyes and I'm glad you're mine.
When I'm in your arms, it's so divine.
Hear crazy music when I call your name. Baby, 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 do you feel the same?
That act proceeded to sort of explode. The acts at the time, of the 50s and 60s, the headliners that included Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Debbie Reynolds, Tony Curtis. After those headline performers were performing, they would go and see Louis and Keely performing in this lounge. And it just sort of continued to roll from there.
I'm gonna tell the rats about you, we'll pack them in. Hey folks, this is the hippest room in Vegas, am I right?
I started writing this show with Jake Broder at a tiny 99-seat theater in Los Angeles called Sacred Fools Theater. And Taylor came and saw it. That's how he met us. He came on board, and he knew Keely and started bringing her to see the show.
She told me a lot of things that had never been published about Louis and Keely, and also about Keely and Frank Sinatra, various people, friends of theirs, people that were involved with him at the time in Las Vegas.
And he then did some expansion, and instead of it being sort of specifically a musical review, said, I think there's a particular arc.
When the end comes, I know that's just a gigolo.
I'm pregnant. Save it for the stage.
I have a fellow named Anthony Crivello, who happens to be from Milwaukee. He was born and raised in Milwaukee, came to Chicago, cut his theater teeth here, and then went to New York.
It's really kind of a privilege to portray a man like this. I mean, not only because of my background, my heritage, but also because it's the complicated character, many layers I'm still discovering. I'm not trying to do an impersonation, rather to create the essence of who this gentleman was. You're looking at language, how he spoke, certain body posturing, how he moved. Not only walked and talked, but also danced, and how he flowed, how he conducted a band. It's all those important pieces, and then, very importantly, how he worked with Keely Smith.
Anytime he can throw in a little something from Milwaukee. So we have a character coming in into his first show, and he says, "Where are you from, big guy?"
And he says to me, "Milwaukee." So then I just started improvising a line to just get him across the stage.
Milwaukee. Oh, I like that Blatz beer.
And it became part of the script.
I've been listening to you since I was a bambino.
So Anthony Crivello is playing Louis Prima, and he is a consummate performer. He is great. He's got a great voice. He's a fantastic actor. Louis Prima was from New Orleans. He had a New Orleans accent, and Tony has completely digested that. He's great in the show.
Then I joined in matrimony with a girl that serves spumoni, and Angelina will be mine.
Forget about me.
Don't worry about me, 'cause I'll get
Be
along.
happy, my love.
Keely is another indelible character. She's got such a great voice. She had such amazing style. And Vanessa Claire Stewart, she's from New Orleans. She grew up listening to Louis and Keely. Louis Prima was a native son of New Orleans, and she loved the story. She understands Keely, and I must say, Keely saw her in Los Angeles do this role and put her seal of approval on her, which is a big deal.
Oh, black magic has me in its spell.
Oh, black magic that you weave so well.
The reason we're here is that Keely Smith said Chicago was her and Louis' #1 venue. For some reason, their music clicked with the Chicago audience.
And Keely said that when they were here, they just stayed and stayed and stayed, and people didn't ever want them to go, and she loved it.
What you're going to hear in this show is a variety of songs from the Great American Songbook, but all done in that specific Prima or Sinatra style.
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven.
You know, I think that by doing a project like this just reintroduces it to new generations. I think they're going to appreciate it as well.
The music is just, whether you're young or old, it's just catchy, you know, and I think there's just magic between the two of them that hopefully we are recreating.
You know, when you leave this theater, you're happy. You've seen something, you've been touched, I hope, by the drama of it, but you leave going, yeah, I was really entertained. And I think that's the goal.
And that wraps it up for this edition of Detroit Performs. As always, for more arts and culture, head to DetroitPerforms.org, where you'll find featured videos, blogs, and information on upcoming arts events. Also, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We'd like to thank Trinity House Theatre for having us out here today. Make sure you look up their schedule and head out to Livonia for an enjoyable evening. Until next Tuesday, get out there and show the world how Detroit performs, y'all. I'm DJ Oliver. Thanks for watching, guys.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.